Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal talk, and I would add today also talk of the Canadians men's national team who played, of course, in the semifinal of the CONCACAF Nations Cup last night and beat Panama by a score of 2-0 on 2 goals from who else? The usual suspects. Really, there's 3 of them that score a lot of goals, and 2 of them deliver last night on a very, very big stage. They'll look to do the same thing on Sunday night on the biggest stage. We know who their opponent is going to be. It's going to be the U.S. men's national team. A year ago, CF Montreal, less than a year ago, had more representatives than any other club in the world on the Canadians men's national team going to the World Cup. There were 6, and last night there were not 6. As a matter of fact, there weren't 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. We'll discuss why and how the former members of CF Montreal did in last night's game as well. We have so much to talk about. Victor Montagliani spoke to The Athletic. We'll touch base on that as well. A heated game between U.S. men's national team and Mexico. And we'll discuss what happened in that game as well. So much to talk about that we're bringing you a special edition of the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal talk, and talk of the Canadians men's national team today as they look for their first trophy in 23 years. Jeremy Filosa joins me. We're going to talk about it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. CF Montreal talk.
Here's the chance, they've got the goal! Absolutely incredible! Cameron Porter delivers the goal to send Montreal Impact into the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final.
The sickest CF Montreal podcast. It's gonna be sick.
I'm Marinaro, and from 98.5 FM and MFC Radio, Jeremy Filosa joins me. Jeremy, how you doing?
Very good. Very excited after everything that happened last night in Vegas.
And so am I, and we're going to get to it in just a second because since it is the Sick Podcast CF Montreal talk, let's start with a little bit of CF Montreal, even though we brought you some yesterday. But yesterday, of course, when Olivier Renard met members of the media for the mid-season report, let's say, he was asked about Romell Quioto and his injury situation. As a matter of fact, it's you that asked the question, Jeremy. Let's go back. We have images of the video courtesy of CF Montreal's Twitter page. By the way, let's hear Olivier Renard, CF Montreal sporting director, talking about Romell Quioto.
Il revient plus vite que prévu. Le problème, c'est qu'il retombe plus vite que prévu aussi, donc c'est compliqué avec lui. Mais voilà, là, on a décidé de le laisser aller où il voulait pour se faire soigner.
Miami, c'est
parce
ça?
Que, disons qu'il fait un petit peu le tour du monde là, mais l'important c'est qu'il est avec son médecin avec qui il a envie d'être et parce que des blessures, parfois les joue pas, parfois souvent. C'est aussi mental et si tu remettre en fin de contrat, donc. Moi, je vais vous parler honnêtement, là, pas en tant que directeur sportif. C'est vraiment, je lui conseille de faire le mieux possible pour revenir le plus vite possible, à 100%, pas à 50%, parce que à la fin, c'est pour lui-même qu'il va jouer là, pour son prochain contrat, que ce soit pour nous ou pour un autre club. Donc, je vois pas pourquoi il irait faire la fête tous les jours. Je conseille à travailler et à revenir le plus tôt possible.
All right. And then last night, I believe it was last night, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but out of the blue, Romell Quioto on his Instagram page posts this. La lengua puede mucho.
Right.
Translation?
So the tongue is mighty, or the tongue can say a lot.
Yeah.
You can say it like that. Literally, that's what it means. But it's not the first time that Olivier Renard, uses the media to poke, at a player, which he's not, 100% agreeing with his way of doing things. We remember all the comments about Kai Kamara, FC Hollywood, and stuff like that. So, but now this guy's still on your team. You're hoping that he comes back. You're hoping that he helps you. I told you yesterday that I thought that they were not 100% happy with the fact that he decided to go to Honduras to rehabilitate himself. He also shared some videos in Miami and stuff like that. So I don't know. The team is probably saying to themselves, what is he doing down there? How come he's not home? How come he's not, getting treatment? I have no idea. But obviously, there's something there between the club, between Romell Quioto. We know his injuries have been an issue over the last couple of years. Do they feel like his rehabilitation, he's not taking it seriously enough? I don't know. But clearly, there's something there. Tony, if this was the Habs right now, Every radio station in Montreal would be on pause, and we'd be talking about this and only this.
If Romell loves Miami so much, if they want to send them there, and in return they can send Messi here, by all means.
I don't know what he was doing there, but he said the important thing is he's with his physiotherapist, he's doing his treatments and stuff like that. But I feel like in Renard's message, he was sort of saying, he needs to come back at 100%, not 50%. Is that a crack at how he prepares himself, his body? I don't know, Tony. I don't see how this association will continue beyond this year, simply because.
So, Jeremy, you're not the first one to point out that if Olivier Renard has something on his chest when he meets with members of the media, he usually gets it off his chest, and sometimes he passes subtle messages, and sometimes not so subtle, and as a matter of fact, very direct.
Which is great for us. We don't mind.
No, we don't mind at all. He can keep on doing it. The more, the merrier. Romell Quioto likes to live life, and sometimes, his conditioning is probably not at the level that it should be for a player of that level, which is pretty elite as far as MLS standards are concerned. And I know exactly what Olivier Renard is thinking. He's basically saying, he's worried that this guy comes back and he's 50% or 60% or 70% of himself, because let's face it, he's going to need Romell Quioto to make the playoffs. Because if Romell Quioto is not at 100%, I mean, it's going to be tough for CF Montreal to make the playoffs, even though, they have a very favorable schedule down the stretch. And I say this, I don't know how much interest there will be for Romell Quioto and how easy or not it will be for his agent to find him a job should he not be back with CF Montreal. But if there aren't a lot of takers, I think Olivier Renard would bring him back, but would bring him back at a rebate. And would bring him back on a short-term deal. Ideally, if you're going to ask me what I think is going to happen, I think he's gone. Because I think Olivier Renard is worried about giving a guy like Quioto a deal where he's going to be comfortable, which could lead to complacency because he has this habit of, going on the party a little bit, like he mentioned. And I think it's over.
So, Tony, for me, the amount of money is not the issue. Whether you're paying him $1 million or you're paying him $500,000, let's say you're getting him at a discount. If the guy is not on the field, what difference does it make? If he's not playing because he's always injured, what difference does it make? I love Romell Quioto. I love everything he's brought to this organization. I thought it was a fantastic trade when they made it, but now I think it's run its course, and unfortunately, he cannot be relied on to stay healthy. But the difficulty is, Tony, and I'm going to say this honestly because I cover other MLS teams for Apple TV, it's not as easy as you would think to just bring in a striker and say, this guy is guaranteed 10 to 12 goals. Look at Cordova in Vancouver. You figure he's good for 10 to 12 goals a year, right? Guaranteed. He comes in, it's not working out. So Romell Quioto has proven that he can score goals with this team. To be able to find another striker that's going to be able to do that, it's not as easy as people would think. So you got to think about it twice. But at the end of the day, if you can't stay healthy, if you can't stay on the field, I got to look for other options.
By the way, some will say, and Quioto has left himself the out because he didn't tag Olivier Renard, or he didn't say who he was talking about, obviously. Some will say that, maybe he wasn't talking about him, but let's not be naive either. All right, okay, let's get to Canada starting 11 last night in their semifinal game of the CONCACAF Nations League versus Panama. And this is the way it went down, with Borjan in goal, a three-man back line. Played pretty much the same formation of CF Montreal do. Vitoria with Alistair Johnston on his right and Kamal Miller on his left. Isn't that something? Two former CF Montreal players. In front of the back line, Eustachio and Kone. There's another former CF Montreal player. With Larea, a right wing back, Adekubi at left wing back. And up top, a trio. Laren on the left, Buchanan on the right, and Jonathan David up top. And of course, we know that Alphonso Davies was on the bench because he hadn't played a game in a month and a half. And isn't it nice to see Bombito there on the bench as well, because he's a great story. Used to play for CS Saint Laurent, as a matter of fact. He wasn't even a starter. Anyway, that's a great story. All right, okay. So, Jeremy, let's get to the game. A big goal by Jonathan David in the first half. Eustachio to Miller, a nice pass, an even nicer pass from Miller to Jonathan David, and he does what he does best, finishing, puts it right through the goalie's legs. 1-0, they go up, and they go into the second half. And it wasn't Canada's best performance yesterday either, but it didn't have to be. They go into the second half. Alphonso Davies comes off the bench less than 10 minutes after he's off the bench. He gets a pass from Jonathan David, and he takes a left footer. He's like a rocket of a shot right under the bar, much to the delight of two people in particular.
That's my boy!
That's my boy, says Father Davies. Rightfully proud.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, a lot of things to say about this game. When Alphonso Davies comes in, right, at its 60th minute, Canada has one shot on goal. One shot, not on target, off target. One shot. They have one shot, and it's the goal. That's it. That's all. So there's not much happening in the first 60 minutes of play aside from that goal. Great pass by Kamal Miller. If you play as a winger in your soccer league and you have speed, you know that you love those balls that are given to you in the depth, that you can go pick up behind the defenders. So perfect play on that. They get the goal. But aside from that, you could tell that Canada was rusty. You could tell that Panama had played at least one friendly. Canada had not. Alphonso Davies, for me, changed the game, Tony, yesterday. It was nice to see that he comes in and, he can get by defenders with ease. We saw it yesterday. One of those runs led to a goal. Obviously, it was beautiful to see. And I'm happy to see that they were able to bring him in, give him 30 minutes. As you mentioned, he hadn't played since April. That's very, very important. But I thought Canada looked a lot better when Alphonso Davies came on. And Jonathan David picks up a goal, picks up an assist. But you're going to have to play better than that if they want to beat USA on Sunday.
Right. Perfect management of the time, having Davies come off the bench. So he's already has speed and he already has pace. And you know that he loves to take guys one-on-one. Now he comes in at the 60-minute mark. He's going up against a couple of guys that are pretty tired. At the same time, you're managing him. He's coming back from injury. You don't want to give him too much. Then all of a sudden, there's a setback, and you don't have him for Sunday night. So it all worked out perfectly. Speaking of those two guys, Jeremy, I picked this up on Twitter. Let's take a look at these stats. Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David in a uniform of the Canadians men's national team. This from F Talent Scout was the Twitter handle. Jonathan David, 23 years old. Alphonso Davies, 22. David's played 40 games, 24 goals, 14 assists. Davies has played 39 games, 13 goals, 17 assists. Jeremy, these guys are going to put up big-time numbers for at least the next decade wearing a Canada jersey.
These two guys are the number one reason why I say Canada is the best soccer nation in CONCACAF right now. I don't care what you say. Yeah, you could talk about Pulisic. He scored 2 goals yesterday for USA. But those two guys there, and you can add guys like Cal Larin into the mix. But these are the reasons why Canada is a force to be reckoned with in the CONCACAF. Now they need to start lifting some trophies. They need on Sunday to beat USA convincingly, to show everybody what happened in the last year and a half. It's not a fluke. Us qualifying for the World Cup, it's not a fluke.
Convincingly is going to be tough, Jeremy. Convincingly is going to be tough, but at the same time, they have an opportunity here because, when usually we're talking about great players, and I think it's safe to say that on a lot of people's list, Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David are the two best players in CONCACAF.
Exactly.
And because Christian Pulisic makes it debatable, you can say top 3 for sure on everyone's list. Serginho Dest is another great name. He had a fantastic game yesterday. Unfortunately for him and Weston McKennie, they're both out and they're going to miss next game. So you're going up against, and by a lot happening with the U.S. men's national team. I don't know if you saw this, of course, but Ron Waxman, the agent for Jesse Marsh, he tweeted out right before the game, while the Canada game was going on, Jesse Marsh will not be the next manager of the U.S. men's national team. And
it looks like Berhalter's going back.
It looks like Berhalter's going back. And by the way, I don't know if you saw some of the reasoning behind it, but one of the things that I read is that the U.S. Soccer Federation feels like they're in a little bit of a pickle because if they were going to bring in a manager with more experience than Berhalter, who would command a higher salary, then they have to almost give the equivalent to whoever's going to be coaching the U.S. women's team. Not that Berhalter, and I also saw, I think it was, I forget who it was. Somebody also tweeted out, hold on a second, that can't really be because Berhalter's making a lot more money than the women's coach is right now.
Yeah,
but anyway, long story short, it looks like
that's the reasoning.
It looks like Berhalter's going to be back, and Christian Pulisic said at the end of the game, hey, look, this is Berhalter's team. Look at the work that he's done with this team. You saw it tonight on the field. This is his body of work that went into this performance and this result tonight. And he said it's probably not a popular thing to say, and haters will be haters, but it is what it is. Okay.
What a disaster last night. I don't know if you watched that game.
I did.
What a mess, Tony. What a mess. And you know what? Right now, you know what I see? And obviously, this is a lot more on the Mexicans than the Americans. But I don't think USA and Mexico are really happy about having to fight in the semifinals from now on. Canada ends up on the right side of the graphic. Why?
Yeah.
Because they've been the better team over the last year. That's why they get to face Panama in the semifinals. And Mexico and USA have to battle it out for basically to play for third place. And they're not liking this at all, especially not the Mexicans. You remember how Canada humiliated Mexico just a couple of years ago in World Cup qualifiers, also went to Mexico, made them look bad. I think Mexico right now is clearly third for me behind Canada and USA. And they're not liking it. The fans are not liking it. We saw fans throwing objects on the field. The game ended with 9 players on each side. A lot of ejections, red cards, yellow cards. The referee actually had to stop the game early because he implored the fans to stop chanting, homophobic slurs when the goaltender was when the goalkeeper was punting off.
Yeah.
It did not stop, so they ended the game early. It was not a pretty sight, Tony. It was not.
No, it was some very disgraceful incidents, and we saw the bad side of soccer last night in a game in which we should have seen, nothing but the great side of soccer. A rivalry which is intensifying every day between the U.S. men's national team and the Mexican national side. That by the time when we were watching the Canada game versus Panama in that same stadium. Didn't look like there were many people in the stadium, but it was a doubleheader. And by the time Mexico was playing United States, there were over 50,000 people in attendance.
54,000 people in attendance. But as you mentioned, a lot of people are saying there weren't that many fans in the stadium, but this is a 60,000 seat stadium. So even if you have 20 some odd thousand, it looks empty. And people were sitting in the upper deck also. So what other option could there have been for CONCACAF? What you could have done is had Canada play in Canada, the semifinals, maybe, but then they would have had to travel for the finals, and there's only a few days between games, so that wouldn't have been ideal either. There was no ideal situation to play this game. I think they did it the way that they thought would be best. Now the question is, will they sell out on Sunday night when Canada faces USA? Because I think if it was Mexico, you wouldn't even have to ask yourself the question because most of the fans in the stadium yesterday were Mexican. But I just hope they have a good crowd for the final on Sunday night.
Jeremy, I was just calculating with my hands here, as you just saw, but the World Cup was played 7 months ago. That's when it started, right? 7 months ago, it was played. Canada played their first game back on November 23rd versus Belgium. And CF Montreal sporting director Olivier Renard was very, very happy at the time to tell everyone and remind everyone that the club team that had the most representation on the Canadians men's national team out of all the clubs was CF Montreal. They had 6 players. They had Alistair Johnston. They had Kamal Miller. They had Ishmael Kone. They had Samuel Piet. They had James Pantemis. And they had Joel Waterman. If memory serves me, they had 6. Did they not?
CF Montreal was the team last year who sent the most players to the World Cup in all of MLS. They were alone.
6 players on that team. Now, 7 months later, Samuel Piet probably could have been on the team, but he is out with an injury.
Yep.
James Pantemis was not there.
Right.
Joel Waterman is not there. And Ishmael Kone, Alistair Johnston have been sold.
Yep.
And Kamal Miller obviously was traded to Inter Miami. So 0 representatives for CF Montreal.
Yeah, but you know what, Tony? I think in the logic, in the reasoning of CF Montreal, this all makes sense because
Of course.
you knew these guys were leaving, and the plan is to develop other players. And Olivier Renard said it yesterday that he thought that Sirois would have had his place on this team. John Herdman said, I don't want to make too many changes for these summer competitions. I want to go with guys that I know. I want to try and win trophies, okay? And he said it specifically. In the fall, when we start playing friendlies again, there will be an opportunity for us to start bringing in new players. I think Chouanière is going to be on the national team soon if he continues playing the way he is now. I think Sirois has a chance. Maybe Waterman can also come back. Piet when he's healthy. So there will be guys on the national team over the next couple of years. It's just that right now, you've sold all those players. You've had issues with injuries, and you put yourself in a situation where right now you don't have any representatives. But I think that'll all change in the next couple of months.
Obviously, the goal one day is going to be to have, Mathieu Chouanière on the national team, Jonathan Sirois on the national team.
Yeah. Maybe
Nathan,
even, who knows?
Nathan Saliba on the national team, Jules Anthony Vilsaint on the national team. This is what they're going to try and do with what they did with the other players. They're going to try and do with them going forward, right? But it's going to be tough because, of course, as the World Cup is approaching, it's 3 years from now. And speaking of the World Cup, Victor Montagliani, the vice president of FIFA, the president of CONCACAF, spoke with, I believe it was Joshua Cloak of The Athletic, and told him that, hold on a second here, there's going to be more games than we had originally talked about.
Yeah, so exactly. So the first thing is we know that the World Cup is going to 48 teams as of 2026, but also the original formula, which was supposed to be groups of 3, has been scrapped, and we're keeping the formula of groups of 4, which for me makes a lot of sense. I think that's what people want to see. They want to see a minimum of 3 games for each country in the group stage. So that's fantastic. And what that means is more games. So I think we're talking about over 100 games now for the whole competition, which means what? Which means more games for Canada and Mexico, which also means elimination games for Canada and Mexico, which is fantastic. So, and
Victor Montagliani said that Canada's first 3 games are all going to take place in Canada. So even though it's not set in stone, you would think that if Montreal would have been there, they would have had a Canada game.
Of course they would have had a Canada game. 3 cities, 3 group stage games. And I understand people were saying, yeah, but originally they were talking about just 2 group stage games. But none of that was confirmed. This was all speculative at that moment. They were testing things out. It didn't go through. What I'm saying is, Tony, when the party comes and you're invited, you either go or you don't go. Then are they serving caviar? Are they serving lamb chops? I don't know. But if you said no and you checked no and you mailed your invitation and all of a sudden somebody calls you and says, hey, you know what? They're going to have caviar and they're going to have calamari. And
international buffet.
But it's too late.
Too late.
And Montagliani was asked, since there will be more games in Canada and Mexico, is there a possibility to add maybe one more city in each of the 2 countries? And he said it's not in the plans right now. So you snooze, you lose.
You're going Quebec.
You know how disappointed I am in this. I cannot believe for the life of me that we let this opportunity slide. And, good on Vancouver to jump on that, pounce on that, opening as soon as Montreal bailed out. But which is where
Victor Montagliani lives, by the way. He lives in Vancouver, and he probably whispered in somebody's ear, hey, don't be stupid. Go to the party because it's going to be quite the extravaganza.
It's going to be insane. And unfortunately, the mentality here is a very small-minded mentality. I can't believe in a city of over 4 million people where World Cup games were basically handed to us on a silver platter. All we had to do is say yes, and we were going to have games. That's what Walter Sieber of the FIFA told me. He said, all Montreal had to do is not pull out. And they would have had games.
Yeah, but they've used the fact that the Grand Prix would have had to be canceled as an excuse, which, by the way, is not true. It's not true that the Grand Prix would have been canceled. It's not true at all. They would have had to invest millions and millions and millions into the Olympic Stadium. What's the difference?
Yeah, they're doing it.
They're doing it anyway.
They're doing it anyways. It's going on right now. They're doing it anyway. So
all right, Jeremy, an ending Sunday night, 8:30 p.m.
Yeah,
Canadian national team versus USA.
Yes.
Of course, once again, in Las Vegas. Jeremy, I have a question for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Ça sent la coupe, Jeremy. Ça sent la coupe or what?
Listen, you remember the last game, Canada-USA, in the World Cup qualifiers?
Yes.
Canada played an outstanding game. They deserved the result. They conceded a late goal, lost nothing. Okay. If I'm John Herdman, I take the tape out and I play it for my players before this game and say, guys, do you remember what happened the last time we played these guys? Watch this and then go on the field and get some retribution, because Canada is there. Now they just need to prove that they can do it on the field. They will have a certain advantage because some of the U.S. players will be suspended. I don't know. They got to play better than they played on Thursday. I got to tell you that. But I think it's the blood and guts that's gonna make the difference in the end.
And hopefully between now and then, Jeremy, this game will be on television.
I don't know, Tony. I don't know what to talk. It's so disappointing. We've already talked about this.
And if it's not on television, you and I will watch it anyway.
Yeah, I can't believe for the life of me that little kids playing soccer right now everywhere around Quebec can't just open their television and watch this, because we're missing a massive opportunity to grow the sport here in our country with this great team that we have on the field right now.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll be watching, Jeremy. Who knows? Maybe we'll even watch it together.
Maybe. I'm going to Boston this weekend.
Oh, I'm not going to Boston.
If I'm back in time, maybe we can get together.
Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for watching a special edition of the Sick Podcast. CF Montreal and Canadians men's national team talk. Ça sent la coupe. Go Canada, go.
Ciao.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.